let me just thank the organizers. Thank you all for this invitation, for the possibility to participate in this very interesting and important discussion. And it's a great honor, and I'll try to. Well, a lot has been said already, and I will try to take advantage of that and maybe be a little bit more succinct than I otherwise would risk to be. I would be risk to be more lengthy. Just to say at the outset that referring to what Mr. Yasin said in the beginning, putting this into a wider context, talking and remembering that we are still living and fighting our way through a global crisis. And this is, of course, important to remember. What happens in Russia, what happens in Ukraine, what happens in EU-Russia relations, that happens also in a wider context. And I think that was absolutely rightly, and thank you, Mr. Yasin, for recalling this from the very beginning. He also mentioned a couple of important dates and the changes of political changes taking place in Russia. The year 2008 was mentioned, when actually the still ongoing crisis actually started, and that is also important to bear in mind. Also, when we are talking about security issues, we tended to forget what actually happened in that respect, and I'm thinking in particular of the action taken against Georgia that year, which was a clear signal of what kind of rough water and risky territories we might be entering. But we somehow managed collectively to put that aside, and again we were taken by surprise when the same or similar scenarios tended to repeat themselves. So it's important to bear these trends in mind. This said, of course, as it was rightly pointed out already, the ongoing Ukraine crisis is, of course, the dominating factor now, making re-engagement and development, strengthening of relations a particularly challenging task. Let me just say I'm no politician, but I must admit, and I'm very happy to hear the principles laid out by Mrs. Beer here, which I think we can all subscribe to. The wording is something that I will come back to, but I think the 3 points that you made, yes, unfortunately, nobody wanted sanctions, but also, and I fully agree, there was no way that this illegal annexation could result in a simple declaration. A substantive reaction was necessary. And this is certainly not a perfect instrument. It's not in the interest of anybody. We all lose out from that. That's clear. Nobody has any doubt about that. But it was something which could not just be subject to a political declaration. It required a concrete response. And here we are. The word containment, it's not part of the language we use. And I don't think, and it has connotations which brings back older times that we hope that we definitely have put behind us. This said, of course, in this concrete situation, where I think all of us have serious doubts whether sanctions by themselves can achieve a change of political decisions of this. I agree with those who personally express doubts about that. But if at least the sanctions during this difficult period could help decision makers to at least think twice before taking further action in the wrong direction, well, then at least that is something. Whether to call that containment or not, I would prefer not to use that word, because it has connotations which brings back memories that we hope we will not have to refresh. Now, have I abused my time already, or no? Okay, you tell me if but I just wanted to link in with what has already been said. So again, while I'm not a politician, and I'm trying to convey, of course, the common view, and I thank you so much for this reminder also, the need for us to speak with one voice. It's difficult, it's a daily challenge we have. We do our best, and we are grateful for all support we can get in that respect. Now, the security, and it was mentioned that what has happened has inflicted damage on mutual trust. I think this is clear. And what can we do about it? Well, I don't think we need new security structures, nor do we need new mechanisms. And I don't think we need new rules of the game either. Because we have the United Nations, the Charter. We have the OSCE, which was mentioned, and which has now suddenly become again a very, very crucial operator. I will come back to that in a moment. But we also have Council of Europe. We have a number of rules, norms, and procedures, and if we respect them, and they have served us well for decades, in particular respect of territorial integrity. And if we continue to respect these rules and norms, then there is a chance, and then we can all enjoy stability, and hopefully also on the basis of that also prosperity. It was mentioned the breaches of documents, the UN Charter, the Budapest 94 Memorandum, and of course all this was violated gravely with the illegal annexation of Crimea. That position has been made clear not only by the European Union, but by the vast majority of the international community. And we have seen in eastern Ukraine the armed support to separatists, which sparked the clashes and which has now resulted in a conflict with at least 5,000 people losing their lives. And obviously it's imperative that we first address and solve this acute problem. And I think the way out, everybody agrees on that, and that is a good point of departure. The Minsk agreements must be implemented in full. And then obviously, normal relations with the Kiev authorities, with the new government, needs to be developed by Russia, and the propaganda war against Ukraine should stop. Russia says, referring to referendums and so on, that it respects the will of the people. Okay, but that is exactly what was expressed in two legitimate elections in Ukraine, the presidential and the parliamentary elections, and the people opted for keeping Ukraine whole and free. They also supported the parties behind the association agreement and free trade agreement with the European Union. And it's important, and we have tried to convince our Russian friends about this, and we will continue to do so in consultations which will continue, that this presents no threat to Russia. On the contrary, a developing Ukraine is good not only for the country itself but also for its neighbors, and in particular it's good for Russia's own economy and stability. Now just a few words on OSCE, which I
but very few.
Very few, okay. This is because we had a ministerial meeting last week, which of course was also dominated to a large extent by events in Ukraine. And it was said, and I think there was a broad agreement about that the erosion of trust that we are witnessing can only be overcome by restoring respect for the basic principles of the OSCE by a genuine dialogue. Maybe the so-called Helsinki Plus 40 process can contribute and help us re-embark on a dialogue to gradually rebuild trust. Finally, also, since we are talking about economic aspects here, I think it's important to, because people both inside the European Union and outside tend to see the European Union primarily in economic terms. But I think it's important to remember in this context that the main achievement is actually the collective security and predictability that we have been able to achieve over a number of decades. And Mrs. Beer already outlined and recalled the importance of these achievements. And consequently also the relativization of geographical state borders. That is one of the main, I would say, achievements. And this is also something to the benefit of Russia. We have also finally, these days, we mark several important anniversaries. The start of the First World War, the fall of the Berlin Wall was already mentioned, and also this calls for reflection. The World Wars and the Berlin Wall were symbols of quest for empire, for world dominion, and they led to terrible suffering. And in the end, the empires collapsed, and people's will and readiness to make sacrifices and even to suffer for their freedom, that is what was behind the remarkable change that we have been witnessing. This was not the result of some kind of political engineering in Washington or in Brussels or elsewhere. This was the result of people being able finally to take their own destiny into their hands. Thank you very much for your attention.